Is this called out of box thinking? No, right? When you are solving for a great problem, at that time you have to iterate on the different solutions. You have to try out which are the different solutions that will work for the particular problem statement. There are ways to reach to the solution. We'll uncover in this video. Let's get started. Hello, my name is Darshan Suthar. I'm a co-founder and a CTO at Versatile. There is two ways to reach to the solution. One is a horizontal way, one is a vertical way. What do I mean by horizontal way of the iteration? Horizontal way is where we basically iterate on the existing solution. We are not coming up with a completely new idea. We are just focusing on what is currently existing in the market, or let's say existing in the current product as well. We are coming up with a small little change that will help the user in a better way. So that's how we are progressing in the horizontal line. We are not coming up with a completely different idea altogether. That's called as a horizontal progress or horizontal iteration in a way. Second is the vertical progress. What is the vertical progress? When you're coming up with an idea which is completely groundbreaking, which were not existing before, and you are completely thinking something out of box that we discussed earlier in the video, right? So that is called as a vertical progress. I would say in the vertical iteration, first people approach that way to come up with something completely breaking, completely new in the industry, and all other are just following them. So those are called to be a horizontal progress. They are not coming up with a new idea because that's already been done in the vertical progress. So they are just changing few things in that particular iteration or the solution, and that called as something new. To understand both the lens better, let's take a business example. When Google had started with a search engine service, right? So after they get popular, Microsoft understand the potential, right? So that's why they also ran into the same way, same direction, and they came up with another search engine called Bing. But as a first mover advantage, Google wins in the race, right? Let's come to the another example, Amazon. When Amazon started, they did really well in a very short time. Flipkart understood the potential and they started in India in the same way. And you know where Flipkart is today. Another one, there's an Airbnb. When Airbnb started, Oyo wasn't existed that time, right? But Oyo also copied the same business model and they also came up with a new model where existing hotels can be posted on their platform and that's how they can run the whole ecosystem. I'm sure you remember when people using internet on Internet Explorer on Windows PCs. Google knew the potential and that's why they introduced Google Chrome. And these days, browse internet without Google Chrome, it's a horrible idea. So far from the business lens, if one company succeeded with a one idea, one feature or one let's say weird idea, right? Everyone wants to copy that and occupy the market. But the ones who basically started with something and also come up with a completely new idea which will solve the user's problem, those have done a vertical progress in the industry and others just did a horizontal progress. So hope you understand the difference very clearly. Let's understand horizontal and vertical iterations from the designs. As you can see, we have an alarm app here. In terms of a current scenario, we had considered this screen. Users have an alarm clock in the first screen where user hit this plus icon that they basically get to create a new alarm. But on the other hand, where they have a list of alarm already set, there they have a on and options together. So one another area where they basically control all the alarms. This is called as a feature, I would say. On top of that, we are currently seeing horizontal progress. So let's see another iteration what we had came up with. We had changed something like a background color, the design language of the application, but the core philosophy remains the same. Let's say another example. In the iteration 2, as you can see, this is also the same only, right? Where design language is only changed. Now come to the vertical progress. So let's consider this as the current scenario that we had discussed right now. In this scenario, which is the another iteration, rather than focusing on the alarm clock, they had showed the experience where users is only focus on the sleep time. So as you can see over here, when users want to create an alarm, they are just showing you sleeping time. So where you can understand, okay, by what time I need to go to my bed and what time I need to wake up. And that will be creating a new experience for a user. So every time users will not feel like they are using any features, but they will feel like, okay, I'm using this experience. Innovation always comes from a one weird idea. Those are the area where vertical progress really happens, I would say. Have you used credit card payment application called Cred? I'm sure you had, or even you might have heard of as well. Cred had changed the design language in the industry. They came up with a completely groundbreaking ideas where you know how a button should look, how you can try different ideas for the button, for the input box, for the visual elements, everything. I'm sure you haven't seen that kind of an app before. That is called a vertical progress. Earlier, Dieter Ram has a studio called Brown, where they used to design trimmer, mixie, and many personal care products, which were that simple that people even don't need a manual to even see how it will function, right? So those are that simple things. So that basically changed the entire landscape for the product design in the industry. Have you ever thought about why Apple's products are so popular and so simple to use? But you will be surprised to know that the chief design officer in early days of the Apple, who is Johnny Ive, he's always inspired by the all principles Dieter Ram had for their products, and that's why they basically adopted those principles and made Apple products in a way that will be simple to use and very accessible in a nature. But Apple haven't done just a horizontal progress yet. Do you remember when Steve Jobs introduced iPhone for the first time, and how was it?
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. They all have these keyboards that are there whether you need them or not to be there. And they all have these control buttons that are fixed in plastic and are the same for every application. Well, every application wants a slightly different user interface, a slightly optimized set of buttons just for it. And what happens if you think of a great idea 6 months from now? You can't run around and add a button to these things. They're already shipped. So what do? It doesn't work. But what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen. Now, how are we going to communicate this? We don't want to carry around a mouse, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to use the best pointing device in the world. We're going to use a pointing device that we're all born with. We're born with 10 of them. We're going to use our fingers. We're going to touch this with our fingers. And we have invented a new technology called multi-touch, which is phenomenal. It works like magic.
You heard it right. If for half of the screen occupied by the keyboard only, then there is completely no use for the whole phone. Also, Apple was the first phone manufacturing company who introduced Face ID and many other features that is completely groundbreaking. Okay, we understood how companies are doing different in the industry, coming up with a completely groundbreaking features as well, and where they are currently. But to stand out in the design iterations, you always have to think vertically rather than coming up with a horizontal ideas, right? So there are a couple of approaches. By that you will be understand how you can think vertically. First is a break boundaries. So when you get the design requirement, you're bounded with certain boundaries, right? Which will be certain variables that you need to take care in design thinking and every other things like that. So when you want to come up with a completely groundbreaking idea, you have to break those boundaries and think out of that as well. On top of that, there is always a research data, right? So there are a couple of data that you get in a contextual inquiry from the surveys and from all the product requirement details, right? So you have to put it aside and think from the fresh perspective, how you can improve the experience for a user. I would suggest one another way to do that. When you're discussing your problem with your stakeholders, with a PM, with a manager, you always ask questions why. Whenever they are saying something about the problem statement, just ask why. So you can get into the detail why they are doing something and why they are not want me to try a different ways. I hope this small framework will help you to understand and also iterate differently. Now, let's check trade-offs for both. In the horizontal progress, you will not have a completely different idea altogether, but you will have a slightly different iteration. Also, you will definitely compete well in the industry. Let's say you are building an e-commerce app. So currently you will benchmark an e-commerce app as an Amazon or a Flipkart one, and on top of that you are providing something different features to the user. But the benchmark will remain same, right? You don't have to come up with a breaking new ideas. And that's what helps in implementation as well. So implementation gets better and better and faster as well. So from a business perspective, that basically saves the time and also amount in a way. For a users, that will be really easy to adopt because they already had tried Amazon or Flipkart some other day, and to try out your app, it will be very easy for them. On the other side, which is a vertical progress, where basically you are creating a barriers for others to come into, and also you will definitely have a first mover advantage. But to come up with a new idea, you need to have a many brainstorm session, and that will also cause some problems like a difficult adoption, difficult implementation as well. I hope so far you have understood the difference between horizontal progress and the vertical progress. I create videos on design and process. If you like this video, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.
It's not a game, it's a